Good morning. My name is Belal and I'm an MA student here at Cardiff University. My dissertation research is exploring the future of Muslim religious leadership in Scotland. I will do this by synthesizing the literature currently available on Scottish Muslims and Imam training with my original research. According to the 2011 census, there are over 76,000 Scottish Muslims, which makes up less than 3% of the British Muslim population. Almost 90% are under the age of 50, making Muslims the youngest religious group in Scotland. Research on Scottish Muslims is an emerging field. Peter Hopkins explains that it is only in the last 10 years or so that research has given specific attention to Scottish Muslims, as previous studies on Muslims in Britain assume that Scottish Muslims have the same experiences as English Muslims. An example of this is British Muslims in Numbers, published by the Muslim Council of Britain, who have excluded Scotland from their analysis of data from the 2011 census. This led to Dr. Khadija Al-Shayal of Edinburgh University to publish effectively the same thing, Scottish Muslims in Numbers. Here's a summary of her work. It is important to have a nuanced approach to the qualitative data and not jump to hasty conclusions. In the next couple of slides, I will compare and contrast the Scottish Muslim context with the rest of Britain. In terms of education, the level of no qualifications is quite similar, but in terms of degree level education, Scottish Muslims are at 37.5% compared to 24% with the rest of Britain, perhaps due to the no tuition fees. And 20% of Muslims in the rest of Britain are in full-time employment compared to 31% in Scotland. In terms of housing, 43% home ownership in the rest of Britain and 52% in Scotland. 28% are in social housing in the rest of Britain compared to 18% in Scotland. And finally, the dreaded prison rate. Muslims overpopulate the prisons in the rest of Britain, whilst the Scottish Muslim prison rate is in proportion to the population. Bashir Mann provides some reasons behind the disparity, highlighting internal migration. When the mills and factories closed down in England, many Muslims heard of the economic success north of the border and seized the opportunity. Did anyone get the 500-mile reference? The Proclaimers? Great. Adding to that, Stefano Bonino explains that Muslims arrived in a society already fragmented along sectarian lines, and the Scots empathized with immigrants from the former empire as underdogs to the English. So here you have the Glasgow Derby, and the flags are Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland. In terms of the literature on Imam training, there are papers surveying the various centres of Islamic religious training in Britain, discussing curriculum. Others suggest contextualizing the traditional learning. But these works focus on Britain as a whole and don't identify a unique Scottish context. When students graduate, they are expected to perform a number of roles as a 21st century British Imam. Imams Online, and Shaukat will hopefully be here soon to take credit for this, they have compiled many of these responsibilities, and it's worth inquiring, where do Imams receive the training for these multiple roles? In terms of curriculum, I'd like to add on a few extra areas of study that I feel modern British Imams are expected to be acquainted with. Does the responsibility of delivering such training fall at the door of Darul Ulooms, the Islamic training centres, or is this the students' own prerogative? For example, here are some prominent Scottish Muslims. Second to the left is Hamza Yusuf, former Transport Secretary. You'd expect him to be asked on politics and current affairs, but not on religious issues. Whereas Imams such as Sheikh Amir on the right are asked on a number of issues outside of their theological training. Moving on to my original research, I'm going to conduct a survey. Thanks to iSyllabus, I have access to over 3,000 adults to whom I will present the aforementioned questions, as well as questioning the importance of Imams having experience in higher education and conventional work settings. After collating the data from the survey, I will conduct 2 focus groups with 6 participants from each city, 2 in each age category. With the hindsight of the survey, I will have a better idea on which themes to focus on during this exercise. The analysis and results will demonstrate one of two things. Either that Scotland has a significantly different context to the rest of Britain, therefore religious leaders would benefit from additional training specific to the Scottish context. For this slide, I was really tempted to use Mel Gibson from Braveheart, but or that Scotland is not really that different from the rest of Britain. We are living through globalization under the influence of the same sources of media and information. When the Football World Cup is on, both countries are passionately following the progress of England, albeit for opposing reasons. In either case, the research will contribute towards the development of Imam training, as the views, expectations, suggestions and criticisms of the research participants will provide feedback for Islamic training centres and help navigate exactly how Imams can develop themselves to serve effectively. Looking ahead, I think we are in need of innovative and creative forms of leadership. Muslims often hear that not all innovation is bad. I'm tempted to innovate, for example, by introducing Pecha Kucha to other Islamic events, because our problem is not that we go over by a few minutes, our problem is that we end up going over by a few hours. So to summarize, there is a young Scottish Muslim community which needs religious leadership. I'm going to combine the literature available on Imam training and Scottish Muslims with my original research. That will provide me with the results to know whether I should pursue the Scottish context specifically or pursue Imam training in general. Thank you very much.